Tuesday night to everyone, this is Urav Desai with the Tropical Weather Outlook for Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. Now, it's still very active. We're only just one day removed from the official peak of the hurricane season. And as you can see in the Atlantic Basin, we still have three storms to talk about, that being Tropical Storm Isaac, Hurricane Helene, and of course, Major Hurricane Florence, which we will get into more detail about later. We also have this area of invest here in the Caribbean Sea, another area of invest just west of the Azores. Before we talk about the Atlantic Basin, I also want to just touch on Hurricane Olivia here, or now Tropical Storm Olivia. As you can see, judging by the satellite presentation, Olivia, which was once a major hurricane, is not looking so great anymore as wind shear is taking its toll, and the cold waters are also weakening this storm rapidly, as it is now only 50 miles an hour. However, it is expected to make its way to Hawaii and make landfall on Oahu tomorrow early in the morning. And while it will not do that much damage, as it will be relatively weak, it will still bring some unneeded rain to areas that just got hit very hard by Hurricane Lane. Now, moving on to the Atlantic Basin, we have this area of invest in the Caribbean Sea, Florence, Isaac, Helene, and this invest that is west of the Azores. However, this invest will not be a threat to land. We do have, however, our invest 95L, which is just north here of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. And right now, judging by the satellite presentation, you can see that it's not very organized at all. It's almost impossible to really tell where the center of circulation is. That's because right now it's in this area of wind shear, here, this pocket of wind shear that's right next to the Yucatan. However, it will be making its way towards Texas and the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. And that area, the wind shear is less, all the way down 10-15 knots. And that's where it should be able to develop and strengthen into a tropical storm. As you can see, most of the computer models do have it making landfall somewhere here in South Texas. And looking at the intensity models, several models, all but one, do have it making it to tropical storm strength and getting named. However, it should not be too damaging for the state of Texas. However, there will be flooding issues, which will be a concern. Now, looking at Tropical Storm Isaac here, we can see that the storm is not very well organized. It's actually becoming less and less organized over time, and that's because the wind shear is starting to take a toll on it, as there's wind shear coming from the west. And the storm is going to stay relatively weak throughout the next 5 days. As you can see, the National Hurricane Center has it staying at just tropical storm strength for 5 days. At one point, it was forecast to become a Category 2 hurricane as it approached the Leeward Islands. However, now that forecast has revised. However, it will still bring some wind and rain to the Leeward Islands. That will be impacting that area when Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon. As you can see, tropical storm warnings are up now for parts of the Leeward Islands, as well as tropical storm watches. And you can see on the shear map here, it will be entering an area of high shear of 30 knots, which will not allow it to strengthen. In fact, it will end up just weakening rather than strengthening. And shall it survive that through the Caribbean, though, there is a chance that Isaac could impact an area and somewhere in the U.S. down the road. However, it is still too early to tell whether it's going to impact the U.S. at all yet or not. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And of course, the big story is Major Hurricane Florence, which is currently a Category 4 with winds of 140 miles per hour, with a central pressure of 946 millibars. And this storm is definitely going to be historic for North and South Carolina. And as you can see now on the 5-day cone, the National Hurricane Center does have it making landfall around the Wilmington area, which has been in the crosshairs of Florence for a while now. And they have it making landfall, if I can find it, they have it making landfall as a strong Category 4 storm, and they have the intensity peaking out around 155 miles per hour, which is very close to Category 5 strength. However, whether it makes it to Category 5 or not is irrelevant, as the storm will still have very devastating and life-threatening impacts to those in North and South Carolina, including storm surge, damaging winds, and heavy rain and flooding, which will all be a concern. Now, if you look at the satellite loop for Florence, you can see that the storm has been relatively very organized over the past day, and it continues to stay organized despite facing some shear from the west. However, it still is remaining fairly organized. The eye is a little bit wobbly, but it is still intact, and the storm has that buzzsaw kind of a shape to it, which many strong Category 4 and Category 5 storms get. And judging, you can see by the cold cloud tops right around the eye wall, that this is a strengthening storm, and it's going to continue to strengthen, or at least stay at the same strength that it's at right now. Now, looking at the water temperatures, you can see that it definitely has plenty of fuel over the next couple of days, as the waters are very warm off the Carolina coast, mid to upper 80s. And at the wind shear map, you can see that there's some unexpected wind shear. That is in front of it, winds shear around 25 to 30 knots. However, just off the Carolina coast, the wind shear lessens to just 10 knots, in where Florence will be able to strengthen as it makes its way towards the Carolinas. Now, if we look at the forecast track for right now versus the previous forecast track, you remember that before the forecast models, if we go to the forecast models, you can see that the current models do have it making landfall in southern North Carolina, and some even have it turning away from North Carolina and then heading south, and then making landfall in South Carolina. Now, that is different from models from 12Z, which most of the 12Z models had landfall in North Carolina, did not having it drifting south towards South Carolina. However, now the cone has shifted south, and so have the models. And now South Carolina is definitely in the picture, and they will need to be preparing for this storm just as much as North Carolina needs to prepare for this storm. Here's the model intensity guidance as of 0Z today. Most models do having it stay at Category 4 strength over the next 36 to 48 hours before it finally makes landfall, and then it will of course weaken as it interacts with land. However, this is definitely going to be a very strong storm at landfall, and it will be very devastating. If we look at the computer models now, the European model, which is generally considered to be the most accurate, most reliable model, if we put it into motion, the European has it approaching North Carolina, and then it has it stalling just off the coast near Wilmington. Then it starts heading south, and this is the change compared to what happened on the last run. Now, instead of going just straight into North Carolina and stalling inland, it has it stalling offshore, and then it makes landfall somewhere around maybe Charleston, South Carolina. Now, this would be very devastating for the South and North Carolina, because not only would it dump a lot of rain, but some of these areas would see over 24, maybe 48 hours even of sustained hurricane force winds, and that will definitely be causing a lot of damage, and it will be quite catastrophic. If we look at the geopotential height now, the upper atmosphere, the reason why Florence is going to be stalling is because of this ridge to the north, and there's also going to be a ridge that's going to be developing to the west of Florence. Now, these two ridges, Florence is basically stuck between the two ridges, and because of that, it has nowhere to go, and it's just going to basically be stuck here off the coast of North Carolina, meander for a while, before finally drifting west and south into South Carolina and Georgia. If you look at the GFS model now, the American model, the GFS has a very strong, this would be a borderline Category 5, strong Category 4 hurricane approaching North Carolina. This is the 18Z run, and then it will be stalling off the coast, just like the European model, drifting south and making landfall somewhere around Charleston is a very strong Category 4 storm. The 0Z GFS, the newest run, has just come in, so if we take a look at that, it also has the storm again stalling just off the coast of North Carolina, bringing very destructive winds and rain with it. And then similarly to 18Z, it has it drifting south and then making landfall in South Carolina as a weaker but still a very strong and devastating storm for that region. If you look at the precipitation model, you can see just how much rain this system is going to dump in the area. Now you can see, judging by the the yellow colors here, that the North Carolina and the South Carolina coast will be receiving 2 feet or more of rain in areas. And this scale stops at just 2 feet, so localized areas might get up to 3, maybe even up to 4 feet. Hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully it is on the lesser side. However, regardless, there's going to be a ton of flooding involved with the storm since it will be stalling over the same area for a long period of time. We also take a look at the new FV3 GFS, which is the new version of the GFS that will be coming out officially next year. That GFS also had a similar scenario where it stalls off the North Carolina coast and then it makes landfall in South Carolina. So all the major computer models are now in agreement that the storm is going to impact both North and South Carolina as a very strong, severe major hurricane. That's all for today. If you're in one of these areas, if you're in North South Carolina, or even anywhere nearby that area, then please make sure that you are following your official orders and evacuation orders and make sure to be prepared and to stay safe. That's all for today.